A do ba do ba do 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 ba do, yeah. A do ba do ba do 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 ba do, yeah. A do ba do ba do do.
Hello, everybody.
What's up?
What's up? Welcome, everybody, to another Saturday live stream here on the
There we
Code
are.
Noobs YouTube channel.
I can see
We are
myself.
now
Something seems
on
different. Is something different?
YouTube.
It is nice.
Something is
Yeah.
different. Yes. We are now on YouTube. Welcome, everybody. Somebody said, loving the stretching cat.
The stretching cat is nice.
Whoever said that, I don't know who low-key relaxing web dev is. I imagine it's Randall, but because I know he's been on the stream. But that was actually my idea, was to like do a different animal every week just to switch it up.
Who
So
doesn't
you
like?
already
Everybody in this group
beat
likes
me to the
animals
punch.
too. It's like part of a requirement, I think.
Yeah. Give us like a thumbs up or just a comment in the chat if you can hear us, if everything seems fine with the stream. This is our first time on YouTube streaming, and it's a little bit different than how we have to do it on Facebook. So just want to make sure everything's going well. Anyway,
For those people who are confused as to why we're on YouTube, what happened?
yeah. So back in late February, the end of February, early March, YouTube changed a bunch of its
Facebook.
Facebook changed a bunch of its data retention policies. Awesome.
To
Good
make it
hear.
harder.
Yeah, so basically they're like, from now on, we're deleting any live stream you do after 30 days because I get it. They don't want to pay that expensive storage fee, but
They're like, we
They
just
don't
want
have
to
a-
scrape the data from your videos
Yeah.
for 30 days, and then
They're
we're going to
like,
delete
we
it.
don't need it
Yeah.
after 30 days.
then that
We get
junk's
the money
going in
and
the recycling
you know,
bin. So
They're like,
yeah,
we're
we
only valued at a
decided,
couple trillion.
hey, let's make it easier. Let's go on YouTube where they actually like keeping videos around.
I thought that said
Surprise, surprise.
deforestation. Sorry, the one username. I was like, deforestation. That's so weird. Anyway,
And
sorry.
yeah, so we're just gonna do things on YouTube now because why not? And also, believe it or not, I feel like there's more, developers looking for content on YouTube than Facebook. I know that's
I know I go to
Maybe
YouTube to learn stuff as
Yeah,
opposed to
that
Facebook
may
where
be
I'm never going
surprising
to
to
learn.
you, but
Yeah.
So from now on, we'll be here on YouTube. I'm gonna confuse
Yeah.
that probably 100 more times, but we will be here on YouTube. You can hang out, subscribe to the channel, watch the other videos we have in here, and if you have suggestions for content that you'd like to see, feel free to let us know. Also, you should know there is a chat box, and you can chat with us live. We love interacting with you. So if you have questions, comments, anything that you can add to the conversation, by all means, go ahead and do it. We're happy to read your comments out loud and answer them, answer any questions that you have. So,
And you can join our community on Facebook, but you can also
Yes.
join our inner circle as well.
yes.
Yeah.
And you can just check out codenoobs.io to see that. Now, with that, what is today's topic, Randall? I'll let you tell us.
Today's topic is a day in the life of a self-employed, self-learned web developer.
Yeah, so this is going to be
Yeah.
a really long live stream. You're just going to follow us around all day.
It starts right now. You get up, you wake up, you do a live stream.
No,
I filmed myself showering earlier, so you can watch that.
perfect.
I'll post that in
That's
the
some of the
inner circle.
B-roll.
Yeah, that's
We'll just
you gotta
insert that in
subscribe
between.
to Patreon for that one.
That's our OnlyFans channel.
Yeah, only noobs. Anyway,
Yeah.
good morning, Eric.
Where-
So, yeah, so a day in the life of a self-taught web developer, or really just a freelance web developer, I think this is a good one because it's going to sort of give people an idea of what it looks like once you get on the other side of tutorial hell, right? Like once you're ready to actually start doing something with your skills. So, how do
Well,
you
I'm
guys
pretty
wanna
sure I've seen
yeah.
what it looks like. I mean, as soon as you know web development, you just get to sit on a beach with your laptop and sip a pina colada,
And
right?
type
You
super
don't really have
fast.
to do any
Pretty
work or learn
Pretty much.
anything
Yeah.
else.
There's
or
only
anything.
like one step between that, which is working at Google for like 20 years, but
Yeah.
it's minor. No, but for real. So I think, when I first got into software development, web development, I don't think I really had a clear picture of what my life would look like as a developer. I think I just thought this will be cool because I can work from anywhere, and I don't know. I just assumed that like you just get a job after this and then you're set. I don't know. But I feel like that's a little bit unrealistic.
Yeah, times have
Um,
changed. I think that's also a lot of people's conception, right? You go, you get a certificate, and then you get a job. And it's like that's not the
mhm.
case anymore. And it's important to be aware of that too, I think. And also just like what it looks like to do well in this field every day, like what you have to do.
Yeah. Well, I think you brought up a good point. What it takes to do well, and I think that's one of the biggest hangups for people is that a lot of the work that you have to do as a developer in the beginning is just on your own, right? It's in isolation. It's like sort of grinding a little bit just to get build a name for yourself, get a couple projects under your belt, right? So that you can actually go apply for one of these jobs because unless you have like a university degree and a lot of experience and you rock at coding, you're not going to just get like job offers thrown at you. You need to build stuff, right?
But that's the one thing I do love about it though too, is that
Yeah.
like that's one of the things I actually like. I know it's like times have changed in terms of how you get a job now as a developer too, freelance and all, and starting out as a new developer. But I think there's also positives there too, which is times have also changed where by yourself you can code out really awesome projects.
Yeah.
And so like even if you're still learning and you're past tutorial hell, not quite yet working, but you want to get to that point where you can really land a good job, you can just create awesome stuff.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I mean, and you keep learning, which is, I don't know, I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's really a couple ways we could talk about like the daily life of a developer because I think there's a couple distinct stages when you're sort of a code noob. So maybe we can walk through those a little bit. I would say there's the distinct stage of like you're still sort of in tutorial hell, like you're not ready to start making money as a developer. And then there's the like starting to make money as a developer phase. And then there's like your developer, like that's your career now. Like you've fully committed to this and not just
Yeah.
like you should fully commit in the beginning, but I mean like mentally you've fully committed to this, right? So maybe we can sort of give an idea of like what those look like, or at least for us when we were going through it, because everybody's going to be a bit different, right? That's one of the cool things about this field is that it's very flexible, so you can go in a lot of different directions. So I see you trying to
Well,
say
why
something,
don't we?
Randall. Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we just start with what a day in each of our lives look like?
Okay.
It's a
You
good place to start.
Yeah. So this is like now, and
Yeah,
we
now.
can kind of claim like what phase I guess we're in, but I think you guys get the idea.
I'll
So
go first.
okay, go ahead. Go ahead,
Yeah,
He
so
Randall.
wanted to go. He wanted to talk
what
I
about his
know.
what I
day.
think I think in line with what you were mentioning earlier, you really need to be a self-starter
Yeah.
Yeah.
because a lot of time, especially if you're doing remote work and things like that, you need to be able to have a schedule to get stuff done on your own because there's nobody really prodding you to get it done. You're not in an office, you don't have
Yeah.
someone looking over your shoulder. So you really have to do it
I was gonna
yourself.
say that's the schedule is so important. Like having routine is like so helpful to
Yeah.
even stay productive, right? By yourself working at home and stuff.
Bingo. And so that's what I've kind of done is I have my own schedule, which I pretty much follow every
Mm,
day. And it's, I wake up in the morning, I do my morning routine, which is like a little bit of exercise, some breathing stuff, some meditation, and then I go to the office that I work at.
mm,
And I could work at home, but I chose to go work at a co-working office because I get to, number one, meet a ton of other people who are developers also, which is great for networking,
yeah.
but also I get to hang around other people because believe it or not, like after you've been doing this whole like dream job remote
Isolation.
developer, it's lonely.
You're like,
You're
oh
like,
man, I really wish I had some coworkers
Yeah,
around.
cool. Another day by myself.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so I go and I do usually like 3 or 4 hours of work in the morning. And then in the afternoon, when most other people are just like running to grab a bite to eat and then go back to work, I go to the gym for a few hours because
Mm,
it's empty. There's
yeah.
nobody
Oh, that's
else
a good
there. I
time.
can get in a
Yeah.
workout. It like kind of breaks up my routine where I've been just using all my brain for a while. Now I get to use my body. And then after that, I go back and do some more work in the afternoon and then get to enjoy my evenings.
That's the
Yeah.
thing I love too about it the most is like it is you do need to be a self-starter to make your own schedule and stick to it, but you also have that freedom of making your own schedule. No one's telling you you have to be here from this time to this time. And if you're
Yeah.
gonna leave, you know,
But
I really like that aspect because I'm like you. I have a very pretty much simple routine every day. It's like do my morning thing, walk dogs, play with them, do that stuff. And then I usually work from around like 8:30 to like noon. Then I take a break for lunch, do some other stuff, hang out with the dogs, and then I'm back to work for like a couple hours in the afternoon and then a couple hours after dinner usually. So it's like I break it up into like couple hour
chunks.
blocks throughout
Yeah.
the day. Yeah, because I find I'm way more productive and you're not staring at something for 8 hours. You get a lot more done because your
Yeah.
brain gets to think about that stuff while you're doing those other
And
activities
you
that you're
just
used to doing.
can't like stare at a screen for that long.
No,
And
it's not good for you. Like
no,
it
I
really
mean,
isn't. You need to get up.
yeah.
There's
I
times when I do, but like when you're busy, you know, if you're really tied down with work or need to get something delivered, like, you know,
Yeah,
it's
I
happening.
think you brought up a really good point, which is like when you were talking about, you know, the going to a co-working space, right? Because one of the hardest things that I saw myself going from a corporate job to, you know, working at being a remote worker, however you want to call it, like working for myself or freelancer. The hardest thing is we assume that like we have perfect integrity. Like when we do that transit, they're like, yeah, I'll wake up at 8, I'll do a
Yeah.
workout, and then I'll like smash out like 8 hours of hardcore coding, and then I'll like eat dinner, watch an hour of Netflix, go right to bed, and then do it all the next day. And the reality is like when the opportunity comes to your brain where it's like, hey, it's 9 a.m. and you're like, oh man, the bed's warm and it's cold outside. I don't
Mhm.
experience this too much anymore in Florida, but I remember when I lived in like New Jersey, I hated waking up in the winter because the bed was like all toasty and warm. And then you can just feel how cold it is outside of the covers. So when that moment hits, you need something to like reel it in and be like, yo, dude, like, you know, we have this pressure when we're working for an employer of like, you're going to get fired or your boss is going to yell at you or whatever. But when you're your own boss, you're like, whatever. Like
You know,
tomorrow's a new
no,
day, right?
but that's just
Yeah.
it, right? That's one of the biggest, I think, pitfalls for people. And I
Yeah.
saw this, you know, it's funny because it's very similar to actually like when I was in grad school and stuff because like you saw it with it. People couldn't keep a schedule and weren't self-starters because like you do that work on your own, right? It's like there's
Yeah.
nobody forcing you to do it. There's no one
Yeah.
making you have to be present somewhere or something like that where you can get fired or lose your funding or whatever. It's like you really do need to be able to like tell yourself because it is easy to be like, well, tomorrow's a whole day.
Right.
So yeah, I can take the day off. But the other nice thing is though, the thing I do like about it is like when stuff comes up, I can take a day off if I want to.
Totally. Or
Like, which is nice.
adjust your schedule or something. And that's
Yeah,
the beauty
yeah.
of it. But at the same time, I mean,
It's
that's
a
one of the
beauty.
main reasons that I like it because you know, when I share my typical day, it's going to sound a lot different than yours probably because I just need extra flexibility in my day. And it's not even like I need it for any good reason. It's just like a personality thing. Like I like the freedom of choosing what I'm going to do each day. It's just, you know, the way I do it is I'm tracking like what are my important tasks and I just chip away at them when I have time to do so. So, yeah. So
I want to hear about your day, but before we get into that, I also want to give one more hidden benefit of working at a co-working space.
yeah,
Is it so like some co-working spaces they'll have 9 to 5 employees working there. So
Yeah.
like they'll be working for a
Ah.
company that rents out some desks at the co-working space. And so you get to see what typical 9 to 5ers do during their job.
And
And they're
laugh at
basically
them.
doing anything to
pretty
avoid
much
doing work.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're spending all day on Facebook
mean,
or
I
YouTube
know-
or LinkedIn or whatever and not actually doing any work.
Yeah.
And it's like it's just helpful because it really makes you feel good when you're productive. Like I sit down behind my computer, I do a few hours of work and it's like deep work. And then
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
look up and they're like scrolling on Facebook and I was like, man,
Well, that's the
that's
other
great.
that's the other thing about having the freedom of schedule that I love is like because like I said, I usually do like blocks of coding. But if
Yeah.
like it starts out and like a half hour in, I'm not getting stuff done or I'm really struggling, I do something else for a little. Because
Yeah.
I find like getting away from it does make it easier. So like when I am coding, it's like super productive. And I
Yeah.
really love that. And I think that's a great point because most people for a 9 to 5, they're just avoiding work all day. And
Yeah.
it's
All
like,
they got to do is fill a seat. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
exactly.
totally. I mean,
So-
I can totally relate to that. In like the last job that I worked was for an email validation company, and it was 9 to 5. It was actually 9 to 6, which sucked even more because they're like,
Oh God.
yeah,
Yeah.
because they're like, we're not paying you for lunch, so you got to take your own lunch,
Well, and that's
whatever.
it.
But
Like you're not getting paid full what you're worth, right? Because you're making the money, obviously. They're
yeah,
not paying you for lunch. It's like so the motivation is not to do work.
no,
It's not to like
and
rush
here's
and
the thing, like, it was a sales job, and we got a lot of leads, like warm leads and things like that, and so, I am like all about efficiency. Like I hate inefficiency. And
yeah.
so when I would go to work, I would genuinely every single day do all of the work I had to do in the day within the first 1 to 2 hours of the day. Like it wasn't that much work. It's just calling people and then calling them and calling them and calling them. And you just like, I could do pretty much everything I could within an hour or two. And the rest of the day I spent like scrolling on Facebook or like taking random calls or like doing random stuff. And it's because there's, you don't have that pressure. Now, I think this is a good point though, because when you're working for yourself, you don't have that pressure either, right? It's not like it's not pressure from like a boss or something like that. When you're working for yourself, your pressure is your own pressure to achieve something, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how bad do you really want this? How much work do you want to put into it? And that's harder, I think, than a lot of people realize to like
It is
find
really well,
motivation.
it can be really hard. It can also be dangerous too, because that pressure that you're putting on yourself can very easily also turn into like a negative thing
Yeah.
that leads to quitting or like,
Yeah.
or not quitting or
Burnout.
just like, yeah, burnout too. And I think we've all experienced that too, where like our meeting on Saturdays have been so helpful because I've caught myself a bunch of weeks where like over the years where, like I've gotten really down about what we were doing, especially when we were learning, like I
Yeah.
can't do this and stuff. And then meeting with you guys, and I remember I'm like, oh, I'm probably burnt out because I've been doing this like,
Yeah.
when we were learning, it was like long days of just
And
nonstop. And so, yeah, it does.
yeah.
Gets to you.
And to speak about burnout too is like, even when you're coding, you're going to get burned out no matter what after a certain number of hours. Like you can't do
Oh,
6
dude,
hours
especially
of
when you're doing
coding. You need to chunk it out.
problem
Yeah.
solving.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Like when you're getting into hardcore logic and stuff, like your brain just at a certain point, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it always takes longer than you think it should take to learn this stuff. Like
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
true.
most frustrating thing for me
And to
is
do it at first,
no,
taking
yeah,
Yeah.
no matter
projects.
what I'm learning, it always feels like it takes way longer
Yeah.
than it should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I agree. It's true. So
Did you
I'll
see
give
the
you
po- the
a
points
brief
comment real
idea of
quick?
like my
Sorry.
life as a developer, and then we can talk about sort of the other phases because I think many of the people who will watch this are not ready to maybe do freelance work or work for a company remote yet. They're still in that sort of learning phase. So I think maybe we can structure out like what is, a good life, daily lifestyle for somebody who's trying to learn.
Yeah.
So I'll make mine like quick and simple. I mean, my day really consists of wake up, make coffee. That's like the number one thing I do every single day is make coffee, and take chihuahuas outside. And then typically I have sort of like a slow morning.
Tons of chihuahuas.
Yeah,
The Chihuahua
I
farm.
yeah, I unleash the chihuahuas, and I wish I had like 100.
That'd
of
be
them.
so fun, wouldn't it? Just
It
a
would be
field of little
fun.
chihuahua.
Yeah,
It's like a quarter acre.
yeah, but my house would be like an inch deep of pee.
Yeah.
Anyway,
The resume says web developer / Chihuahua herder.
yeah, that'd be pretty sweet actually. Yeah, so like I wake up and I typically have like a slow morning where, just have coffee with my girlfriend, and just like figure out what I want to focus on for the day. I mean, usually I have a general idea of what I want, but then I sort of structure out my day, decide when I'm going to do a workout, which typically gets procrastinated a little bit. I like to use workouts as that breakup too. So like, whenever I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I've been coding so long, I can't see straight. That's when I'll go to the gym I have like a home gym too in the garage. So
Can I make
I'll
a
go
quick
do that.
point though?
Yeah.
Because you said something really important there, which is like in the morning, like planning out like what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
Because I know I struggled with that at first too, where like I had these blocks of times that I was gonna use,
Yeah.
but if I wasn't careful, I'd find myself switching between things too much, and then you get
Yeah.
nothing done. So it is like that's the other side of it too, is like not only having a routine, but having to plan out and have a clear sense of what you're doing at each moment so that you
Yeah.
actually get things done.
We shared a prompt in the web dev incubator like a few weeks ago, and it's a really good prompt to sort of self-reflect and see what some of your issues are. And one of mine is not giving myself credit for things that I've done, right? Or
Yeah.
accomplishments that I've had. So one of the things that I typically do is, you can't see it, but like to my left, I have a couple of whiteboards on the wall, and I just keep a running list of like anything that I need to do. And I categorize it like by, is this like household stuff? Is this coding stuff? Is it other, code noobs related or whatever? And anytime that I'm like, oh, I need to do this, I just write it down. And I used to just erase it when I was done with it, but I've like gotten more towards like drawing a line through it so I can continue to see like what I've actually accomplished.
I do that with, I have a daily planner I do that with. I have lists
Yeah.
of like tasks that I need to do. And then like, yeah, because it is helpful because you actually get to see like, oh, wait, because at the end, some days, dude, it feels like you made no progress and you look back and you're like, wait, I did all of
Yeah,
that stuff.
exactly.
Especially when you have to do like household stuff and all too,
And,
you know?
and I think that's really important when you're working for yourself, is to mentally give yourself credit for the work that you've done,
To
because
track what
it's,
you've done, right? Like
yeah,
in some way.
because it's
Yeah.
very easy to feel like, and we see this inside the incubator a lot too, which is like when you're learning to code, you are not actively tracking your knowledge base, right? So you have to actually sit down and reflect on where you were as a developer 3, 6, 12 months ago, to appreciate like how much work you put in, because it feels like you're just doing like a little bit each day, but that stuff adds up.
That helped so much when we were learning, was doing that.
Yeah.
Like actually stopping yourself after a few months and being like, all right, where was I 3 months before? Could I have read this stuff? Could I have understand it? Because that really does make you see the progress you made.
Yeah. Welcome,
Charles
Charles.
just
Good
figured
to
it
see you,
out.
buddy. I know it's a change we had to make, and there's no good way to do it. So we just posted in the group. Everyone should be over here soon enough. But yeah. So
Hey, for those of you watching live on YouTube or watching later, let
yeah,
us know in the comments, what's your least favorite part of having to go to work at an office
yeah,
that you don't have control of? And what do you think would be your favorite thing about working for yourself, if that's something you'd be interested in?
yeah. Those are good. I'm gonna give you my answer. Thinking
Okay.
back upon when I worked in an office, the thing I hated the most was probably just like losing all daylight hours to being stuck
Yeah.
somewhere. Like I
Yeah.
really hated the idea of somebody else out there gets to choose what I do with my time, and like just forcing me to be in a place. I think about this actually now a lot when I
Oh, I
go
hate
to a
that, dude.
store and I see somebody who's like, have you ever gone to a store and you see the same person there every single
Yeah.
time you go? And you're like, man, that person's entire existence lives within these four walls. Like they
Yeah,
don't
it
see
sucks.
pretty much anything else but this. And there's so much world out there. Like that made me more depressed. Also, at the time, the last like corporate job I held was in Boca, and we had these like beautiful glass windows in the office that looked at the beach. So I would just sit there all day staring at the beach, and by the time I
Ugh.
got out of work, the sun would be going down. And I was like, this freaking blows. So yeah, that was
I was
definitely,
gonna say, dude, I like the one that the administration said too, of like not getting credit for work because you're working for
yeah,
someone, right? That's horrible.
yeah,
And then I was gonna add too, like I hated one being stuck somewhere, like having to be somewhere at a certain time for a certain amount of time, I hate. And
yeah,
then on top of that too, not being able to just implement things that are good ideas when I
yeah,
had them, because you're so confined by the corporate structure or by the bureaucracy or whatever, and by
yeah,
everybody else trying to claw their way up,
yep,
that you can't just do things, even if they're good ideas, or you want to just try something out because it might cost money or something, whereas when you're by yourself, you
yeah,
can.
yeah,
Those are
it's
great
true.
ones. How about these ones? Okay. I always hated when it was like really horrible weather. Like I lived in the Northeast for quite a while, and we
Mm-hmm.
would get terrible snow and ice. You would
Oh my
wake up,
God.
your car would be frozen solid, the
Yep.
road, there would be a sheet of
Oh
ice.
God, yeah.
And guess what? You're expected to be at work at
Yeah.
8 o'clock in the morning
Dude,
or
that's
something like
like,
that. So like literally you would risk your own life and your vehicle and all this other stuff just to get to a job that you didn't even want to be at.
Oh,
And
especially
yeah.
then
emergency,
on
right? They wouldn't let you can't. You have to be there
And
all
then
the time.
on the other end of the spectrum, these beautiful days, like the perfect spring or
Hmm.
summer days,
Yeah.
When
when
you're stuck.
literally the only time you see outside is when you're walking from your house to your car, or like you get your lunch break and
Dude,
you spend it outside. And
do
like,
you
Yeah.
know,
but that's it.
I notice that now a lot. Like it'll be like a beautiful day. Like we had a really nice one the other day, and every place I went to, every store, a person working at the register shop was like, "So
They're
nice
just
outside. Wish I
staring
could
out
go
the
outside."
window.
Yeah, like,
Yeah. That's,
I'm
I
like, I
mean,
feel for you,
that
Pressed
dude. It
up against
sucks.
the glass.
that brought
Yeah.
back some, what you were just saying, Randall, brought back some like serious memories of when I lived in Philadelphia, and
Oh
what I was
God.
saying before, when it'd be like freezing cold and you wake up and you're like, oh, the bed's so warm, but you have to go to work. And not to mention, it's not just you have to go to work, but you have to be at work at 9 a.m., which is pretty early anyway. But like that doesn't mean that you're waking up at 9 a.m. It means you're waking up significantly earlier.
Oh, dude.
The other thing I hated is like a lot of the jobs that I've worked in the past have been sales jobs. So you're expected to dress up, which I hate doing. Not like I hate dressing up, but like to go to sit at a desk in an
job,
office and
yeah.
nobody's going to see me. I'm just cold calling people all day. It's stupid.
Eric's is a
Um,
good one too. Getting up at 2 to 3 a.m. to go to work and then coming home when it's getting dark. God,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jesus,
yeah.
that's a long day. Yeah.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, but I do remember too in the winter, I had two options to get to work because I worked at an office like in the middle of the city, right? So I could drive my car, which was stupid because it was like a quarter mile, like maybe a half mile down the road. Actually, it was probably like a mile. Let's say that it's a mile. And, so I'm driving a mile and then I'm just parking my car and paying like half of what I'm making in the day just to park my car. So
Yeah.
that sucked. That was stupid. So I didn't do that most of the time. I opted to just walk to work. But then in the winter, it's like you're literally walking on a sheet of ice to work a mile, and it sucked.
And the wind is
Yeah.
Yeah.
whipping through your dress
Yeah.
pants that are like,
yeah, like-
Paper-
and
in.
plus it's like you don't even have a good option because you can either wear dress pants outside and freeze, and then you go inside in
And
a
you're
super
melting.
hot
Yeah.
office
Yeah.
and you're okay.
Yeah.
Or you can wear long johns so you could survive outside, and then you get into the office and you're just sweating all day.
You know,
Yeah.
it's funny too. Like, I think people, it's easy to forget when you're like in the grind, like of just working every day, like how much time you give to this freaking place.
It's a lot, man.
You know, and like that's the thing that always depressed me so much is like there's so much to life every day, and I feel like you waste so much. It's like, I think that's a huge motivator, man, for so many people.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we've depressed everybody
Yeah,
listening to
okay,
this
everybody's
live.
sad.
So
Good.
let's
That's
go
where I
back
like
to the
the audience.
benefits
That's
of
it. That's the
actually
live stream.
being a self-educated web developer and working for yourself.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
What's
I
the
think,
light at the end of the tunnel?
The
I
light at
think
the end
when
of the
you-
tunnel is that you get to choose all of those things when you become a freelance or remote developer, right? You get to choose when and where you work and how many hours you put in a time and a lot of those
And
things.
I also think, I know it's depressing, but I also think that was like the best motivator for me when I was
Yeah.
learning, was reminding myself of all the things I hated about my job. I even wrote a list.
Yeah.
And like when I would get down about learning, I'd look at the list and I'd be like, oh, right, that's why I'm doing this, because I hate all of that stuff and I
Yeah.
don't want that anymore. And it's like, that can be really powerful, I think. And like in getting to like when you're learning, set a schedule for yourself. Figure out like what times of the day do I have time where I can take away from other stuff, whether it's like watching TV, scrolling, whatever it is, and put that towards something productive that I'm going to get out of this position that I hate, right? In the future. So like really trying to figure out like what blocks of time can I use and start doing that every day, so that you're
Yeah.
in this consistent schedule of learning and progressing forward.
Yeah, I think that's a
Along
good
the
point.
lines of what you're saying there with like using it as motivation, a lot of people ask like, when should I quit my job to become a web developer? Should I just quit now and start studying?
Yeah.
Or will I have to take a big pay cut? I know what I would think for that, but what do you guys think?
I think
Don't quit your
that's-
job right away.
Yeah, don't quit your job until you have some supplementary, like something that can take over your current expenses. And the
Yeah.
reason why is this is if you
The
get to a
stress too,
yeah,
right? Like,
it's
yeah.
mostly that, right? It's if you get to a position where you are now like concerned about where money is coming
Desperate,
from to
right,
pay
to make
for like
money.
your everyday things, it's puts you in a mindset of like scarcity, right? Of there isn't enough things in the world, and you may not realize it, but that affects literally everything in your life. Your ability to learn, your ability to communicate with other people, your ability to like apply for jobs, it all comes through. It's something that like seeps through without you actively doing it. So I would say what the better strategy is to keep your current job and start learning enough so that you can sell simple websites to people and start earning some income. Do that to the point where you can replace your income, and then you can just do that when you want. And then you can continue learning, and you're building projects, which will make it easier for you to eventually find a remote job. If
The other
that's your-
thing too
if
is
that's your plan.
if you really hate your job and you're really serious, and this is what I did myself, also look at like what BS are you doing for your job outside of hours that you can cut out and focus on doing something for yourself. Like, so I
Yeah.
would just not look at my email and stuff after a certain, just like that's
Yeah.
done with that,
Yeah.
and move on to things I'm
think-
gonna progress because I don't want to be there
And-
anyway, right?
You
So-
make
And
a
then while
really
you're
good
at
point.
work, look at what BS
Yeah.
stuff you're doing that you could have
Yeah.
ChatGPT do, and
Yeah,
use that
exactly.
spare time to start
Yeah.
making money as a developer.
I think you actually make a really good point though, and not just related to like what BS like in terms of like work stuff, but just like what other BS in your life is
Yeah.
holding you back from this dream. Like, are you going out to the bar every weekend? Are you wasting time with people who are bringing you down? Are you are you associating yourself with people who don't strive to achieve more in life? Like
When you
those
decide
things-
to do this, how many people actually said to you too, like, really, it's gonna be too hard and da-da-da. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, like, and it's like just because you're unhappy doesn't mean I have to
yeah,
be screw
it's
you.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And you will run into that. I think that's a good point. And I think I know I mentioned a bunch, but like when we did the boot camp and started learning, like I wanted to take it seriously. I didn't go out like that whole year. I think I did it maybe
Yeah.
a couple times for like important stuff. But other than that, I just was like, nope, this is more
Yeah.
important than that. It's
Well-
gonna suck for a year, but you know what? I'll be way further ahead in that year than I would have been otherwise.
yeah,
And I was.
absolutely. And a lot of people forego their education and interest of things like going out to bars and things like that. I mean, I
Yeah.
can tell you, I've talked to plenty of people who've been interested in like the web dev incubator, and they're like, yeah, I just don't have any money to spend on anything. I just want this dream. And the reality is nothing comes from anything if you don't invest in it, right? So if you're not willing to put in lots of time and or money for this dream, you're not going to get it. Nobody's like itching to pay you $200,000 a year for you to not
Yeah.
care about your own education. Like that doesn't work that way.
No, and the other side of it too is I think like it's funny because like I think a lot of people think, well, I like going out. It's a good break, or I like buying these things because it gives me like some pleasure. But you know what? You get way more pleasure out of the accomplishment you have and the
Yeah.
progress you make learning than you do from any of that stuff. And it's long lasting pleasure because you realize like, oh, you've developed a new skill, like a totally new skill you've created for yourself. It's awesome.
Yeah. I'm curious. So if we were to go back to when we were studying, and whether that's in the boot camp or before that, and you guys had to sort of break down a day in the life of you at that time, working a job or whatever, what would that look like? Because I know that is, we're saying this like fantasy of you don't have a job and you can just code all day, but that's step 2 or
Well, I can tell you-
3, right?
I
Go ahead.
I can tell you what I did. I mean, so like I was a little because I was teaching, so like my schedule was a little different than a regular 9 to 5. It was
Yeah.
it was more, I guess you could say, scattered. Like I worked some nights, I worked during the day sometimes. But basically, I reduced everything I had to do at work to the bare minimum
Yeah.
because there's no point in doing anything extra anymore. And then basically, I would get up early, usually learn from like 8 to 11 because I could, then
Yeah.
knock out my work, teach whatever, and then if I didn't have class at night, I'd do that again for like about another 3.5, 4 hours a night. So I
Yeah.
was doing like, but on average, like 6 to 8 hours a day of learning.
Yeah.
And
that's
it was
good.
that was my whole day. It was basically that and work and then dogs and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I agree with
Dogs.
Danny there, where you really need to be disciplined and
Yeah.
cut the extra stuff out of your life. Like I read 4 Hour Work Week a long time ago,
Mhm.
but one thing that talked about was cutting out a lot of the BS stuff, like watching the news,
Yeah.
social media, all these things that, yeah, it can add quality to your life, but in general, it's just waste your time.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
think-
except for
Quality's
Cody's
overrated.
Facebook
No,
group
no,
and our
I'm
YouTube videos right here.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
everything
only
else-
code names. No, I think you make
But-
a really good point, and I just want to say one thing about that, right? Is I think we have this perception now because there's so much information that flows so quickly that we feel like if we miss something, like we're screwed, right? Because everyone else is ahead of us. Like we miss the news or whatever. The reality is this: most of what you see on social media and in the news and all that stuff, that is all just fluff. It's all just a narrative. It's all a story that somebody's telling you to get views. Because remember, I talk to our kids a lot about this. Nobody creates anything in this world just out of pure, like,
Nope.
charity, right? There's a reason why news companies exist. They do it for advertising dollars. So they're just trying to hype you up and grab your attention. All that shit doesn't really matter. If you think about, like, if you missed every single piece of news you've ever heard in the past year, how much would that affect your life? Probably not a lot at all, right? So those things are easy
when
to
you
forego.
talk with people, everybody tells you about the news.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you do miss stuff, they are more than happy to tell
Yeah,
you.
you'll find out about it,
what went on in the
exactly.
news. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you really miss it, then it didn't matter.
Yeah, it didn't matter at all.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But
you bring up a good
also
point.
one other thing that I did was that back when I was working in an office and I had to be in an office, I would use any downtime that I had to learn to do
Which is a
extra
lot
stuff.
of time, right?
Yeah, a lot of time. Because sometimes you're slammed and you can't, and sometimes your boss is looking over your shoulder and you can't, but I'm guessing there's probably a lot of time when you can. And so instead of scrolling on Facebook or reading whatever, you can actually use it in a productive way.
I would use that
Yeah.
time for code books
Yeah.
and like tutorial videos and stuff just to watch, just to learn more, or documentation, stuff like that. Just reading anything that would increase your knowledge is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the big struggles when, if you're working a job and trying to become a software developer is that you're already working a lot and that takes a lot of mental strain. And then by the time you're getting out of work, it's hard to like focus. I mean, we hear that a lot in the web dev incubator, and that's true for all of us. We dealt with that too, is like by the time you're out of work,
need a
all you
break,
want to do is
right?
watch Netflix, right? And then go to sleep. And so I have a couple of things that I think can help people with that. Number one is, we'd mentioned this a couple times already, but actually schedule time for coding, right? So that you start to train your brain. Like this is, I come home from work, maybe I take a few hours to myself to like relax and unwind. And then from 8 to 9 or 8 to 10 or whenever you can fit it in, you put in some coding time. I think that's really important because
And I think too, if you're excited about it, it's easier to
Yeah.
do. And
Well-
if you're not excited about it, that can also be a problem,
And-
right? Like, I mean,
yeah. It's interesting that you just said that because that was sort of my second one, which was just to listen to your body, right? Because sometimes when I code, I can code for 6 hours straight and not ever look up, right? Sometimes when I code, I get a half hour into it and I want to punch my computer monitor. So listen to your body, like it's telling you something. So
it's why, when you feel exhausted every day you go to work, you feel that way because you don't like work.
right, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Your body's like, yo,
Yeah.
screw this. Why are we doing this again? Right. But
Here's another idea is
Yeah.
we talk a lot about planning out your projects.
yeah.
And kind of, if you plan out your projects in advance, think about them in advance, you can have a whole bunch of different things that you need to work on your project. And you can
Yes.
organize them into things that are easier to do, things that are harder to do, things that you need to think about with logic, things that may be a bit more creative. And so then you can look at all the things that you need to accomplish and you can say, where am I today? And what do you think I could work better on?
And what can you get done on like pen and paper? Because that's another thing to use work time for, right? Is planning and stuff. Even if it's just planning your learning exercises. So when you get home in that 2 hours, you're like, okay, I'm sitting down, I'm doing this, and then this,
Yeah. One of the other things, I'm sure some of the guys in here, probably Eric does this, is you can listen to coding audiobooks while you're at work, depending upon your job, obviously. But that's a great way to incorporate more learning into your workday because, again, we just talked about this, but a lot of your workday is wasted time. And so use some of that mental energy and that time in your workday to actually accomplish these. The other thing I was going to say is it's if you are building projects, which is a great way to learn and build up your portfolio, be your own boss. So set timelines like your boss would or your future boss will, right? Where you're setting milestones for the project of, hey, auth needs to be implemented by this date, and the database needs to be implemented by this date.
Make them realistic at first too, so you don't make yourself down. Like give
Yeah.
yourself time. But yeah, that's a really good
Yeah,
idea
and-
because it's like
And
puts the pressure on.
figure out some either rewards or, you know, something that's going to motivate you, right? So like, hey, if you hit this milestone, you get to go out for ice cream, or I don't know what it is, just something so that you're like, have actual motivation to hit those and keep yourself accountable.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, you're going to see very quickly that when you start working for yourself, even if you have a remote job, you have to take on a new level of accountability, because when you're in a remote job, there is no office, there is no boss there. So it's very easy to like get stuck watching reels or whatever it is.
It's also, you know, when you're working remote or at home by yourself too, you know, like your home becomes also your office.
Yeah.
And it's also, you can also have the flip thing happen too, where you work all the time. Because that's happened to me too,
Yeah.
where like I started to work too much because it's like you're always at work.
Yeah.
And I think so
And
it
you
is,
always have something. Yeah.
that's where that schedule becomes really important because it also reminds you like, hey, I have a life too. Like,
Right.
and like, yes, there's times where you need to work a lot. That's true. But like, there's also, you need to enjoy your life too. And that's the point of this. So I think working towards that's important. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
totally.
right, well, we're about out of time.
Yeah,
we
we
are
are.
about
Yeah.
out of time. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will continue these on YouTube. So if you haven't, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to join us on Facebook, you can do that as well. Facebook.com/groups/codenoobs. You can join us over there. There's a, you know, active free community where you can interact with other developers, share your coding challenges or successes. Pretty active community there. So yeah, and if you are inside the Web Dev Incubator, we will see you in about 15 minutes. Just check the Telegram group for the link.
Yep.
Anything else you guys want to share?
No, that's it.
That's it. All right. Well, thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next Saturday.